Hi, I'm Susan Howard. Welcome to the Fall 2020 Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at Johns Hopkins University preview. We are looking forward to being back on ground in the campus and satellite locations in the fall. We will be offering our courses 5 days a week, as we usually do. We have an amazing lineup of faculty. We've brought back faculty who have taught with us for a long time that are very popular, and we've sprinkled in some new faculty into the fall schedule. You should look for that schedule to be coming your way on Friday, the 5th of June. It will be emailed to you. You'll receive everything by email, and you will be able to register the same 5 ways that we've used in the past: by email, by fax, online, on the phone, and by mail. So please fill out your registration form and pick whatever way you like to register. And now I'd like to introduce you to the wonderful Osher at JHU staff members. The administrative supervisor at the Montgomery County campus, Ann Wicker.
Play
Hi,
loud.
Ann. How are you doing?
Tommy, keep practicing your piano, honey. Hey, did anybody feed the cat? The cat's in the middle of my meeting, guys.
Well, it looks like Ann might be a little busy.
There's so much going on here. Guys, I have a staff meeting coming up.
We have our part-time program assistant on the Montgomery County campus, Shali Zhang.
The shipment came yesterday, and I opened it, and most of the stuff are used. It looks like,
Well, it looks like Shali's a little busy right now, so let me move on and introduce you to program assistant JT Oliver from the Montgomery County campus.
It looks like those shoes are you know, like the ones that's on the display.
Indoor allergens.
So, and I try to.
Well, it looks like JT is busy, so I'd like to introduce you to program assistant Andrew Ward from the Baltimore Columbia campus. Let's check in with Andrew. It looks like we caught Andrew at a bad time. So let me introduce you to program assistant Emily Owens from the Montgomery County campus. It looks like Emily might be busy. Why don't we try Kathy Cook, the program coordinator at the Baltimore Columbia campuses? Wow, maybe we caught Kathy at a bad time. Well, as you can see, the Osher at JHU staff members are always busy working for you. And that's it. That's your Osher at JHU staff.
Hello, everyone. My name is Saul Lilienstein, and the course that I'm going to be teaching this semester is called Mozart and Beethoven, the Essential Masterworks. Now, you know, if someone would ask you, what was going on that was important at the end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th century? If you ask that question of somebody on the street in Rockville, they might say the formation of the United States, the Constitution, things like that, right? You agree, Stan? You know what I mean. What about the Constitution is constantly in need of amendments and corrections. We're stuck with this, aren't we? That is, all the things that are supposed to work right don't seem to work right. Even an agricultural rhythm of you plant something and then it grows and then you harvest it and then you eat it. So where is there a place where the rhythms are perfect? Where they are perfect. For those of you who've never taken my classes, it's not a time where people sit back and, and here comes the nice music and they're entertained by it. So the music is quite nice. I want to know what it's like to be inside of those beautiful lines. And that's what I try to study for myself and to share with other people. This course, Mozart and Beethoven, is as close as I can get to the most essential ways of discovering that. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stan Levin. This fall, I'm going to be teaching a course called The Wonderful World of William Wyler. Wyler has the distinction of having more Academy Award nominations for Best Director than anyone else, 12 in fact, more than John Ford. And even though Ford won more Oscars, the 3 that Wyler won also won Best Picture, Mrs. Miniver, Best Years of Our Lives, Ben-Hur, and that makes him unique. Nobody else has accomplished that. His career was wide and varied, Wuthering Heights, Jezebel, Roman Holiday, Funny Girl, in addition to the films that I mentioned. And perhaps because he doesn't have a signature touch like Hitchcock, that he was able to do so many different films so well. So the purpose of our course is to go through his career, look at the kind of films he made, what were the times he made them in, and reignite our interest in William Wyler. By the way, a couple of years ago, I did a course on Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder is somebody different than William Wyler. I just want to be clear about that. So I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're safe. And I look forward to seeing you in the fall. Thank you very much.
My name is Mel Goodman. I teach a course in international relations. I'm not a molecular epidemiologist, so I can't discuss the impact of the virus on the body, but I am an international relations specialist. I can discuss the impact of the virus on the body politic. And what I will do in the course in the fall is discuss several important key aspects of this pandemic, its impact on the global community and international relations, and possible realignment of the international situation. Then I will discuss an assessment of the threat to the United States. We've exaggerated the international threat and we've ignored the national threat, not only the climate, but this pandemic. And then I will look at the impact of the exploded defense budget and our huge military footprint on our resource base, because obviously we need more funding for domestic agencies, and we're going to have to take that out of the military budget. And finally, because we begin the course in September in the middle of a presidential campaign, I will examine the differences between Trump's foreign policy, which is one of isolationism, and Biden's foreign policy, because he's a traditional globalist. And with the ending of the course coming after the election itself, I will certainly discuss the outcome of the election and its impact on the international community and important leaders around the world.
Hi, I'm Jim Blue. In the fall, I'll be teaching 2 of Shakespeare's late plays, The Winter's Tale and The Tempest. When they were first printed, they were called comedies. That's because the main characters are alive at the end, as opposed to tragedies where the main characters are dead at the end. Now they're sometimes called tragicomedies. They start with events that could lead to a tragic ending, but they end happily. Now they're generally called romances, but not like modern romance novels. And unlike Shakespeare's comedies, young love is not the main point. There are young lovers who are engaged to marry at the end, but the main characters are older. There's wandering and separation, happy reuniting at the end. This is a discussion class, not a lecture. We read part of a scene, we discuss. I show video clips from a couple of film versions. We discuss different interpretations of actors and directors. And from time to time, I provide a few words of wisdom. So out of this, you'll get a better understanding of these plays and of Shakespeare's works in general. It's a small class, so we get to know each other well. So I hope to see some of your smiling faces in person in September.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there. Many of you already know me. For those of you who don't, my name is Seth Keibel, and this fall I will be teaching clarinetists of the swing era. You know, when I was in 8th grade, I had been playing classical clarinet for a number of years, and I had started to become interested in jazz music, and I went to my middle school band director, a very well-meaning but misguided individual, and said, I'd like to play jazz. And his reply, well, that's great. But if you're gonna play jazz, you need to learn to play the saxophone, because you can't play jazz on the clarinet. Now, of course, that's ridiculous. You all know that. You're very educated people. But it's true, for the past 60-odd-some years, the clarinet has occupied a relatively small place in the world of jazz. But once upon a time, the swing era, roughly the 1930s through the start of World War II, clarinet was the dominant force in this music, being played by such stars as Benny Goodman, Artie Shaw, Woody Herman, and others. This class will talk about the lives, careers, and music of these virtuoso musicians, and will feature audio recordings, video recordings, live performances from this guy, and like any good class on jazz, a fair amount of sex and drugs. Discussing sex and drugs, of course. Anyway, I hope you all can make it, and I look forward to seeing everyone in person in the fall.
Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Friedman. I look forward to seeing you all in the fall as we get back to normal. And what we're going to do to brighten everybody's spirits is talk about the choreographers who shaped the Broadway musical, going back to Agnes de Mille and how she changed the concept of dance in Broadway musicals to ballet by creating ballet movements and wonderful storytelling in Oklahoma and Carousel, onto the evolution of Michael Kidd, the Gower Champions, the Bob Fosse's, leading us up to the Michael Bennett's and the Tommy Tunes. These are the people who assumed control of the Broadway musical by deciding that just being a choreographer was not good enough, that they actually had to assume responsibility for what the musical looked like. Maybe one of the most famous people who took charge of that position is Jerome Robbins, a very controversial person in his private life, but one that changed the way dance also was perceived in the Broadway musical, perhaps West Side Story being the most classic reinvention of dance and storytelling for Broadway. So we're going to explore all of these different people, bringing us up to the modern times, and I look forward to seeing you all. And if you prod me, maybe I'll even sing a little too. I look forward to seeing you in the fall.
Hello, I'm Dr. Kenneth Hinga. The class I'll be teaching is titled Issues in Food Safety, Should I Worry? I became involved in food safety issues when I spent the last 10 years of my career with the USDA Foreign Agricultural Service and then the FDA International Office in Foods. In this class, we'll look at a variety of topics. We'll look at foodborne pathogens such as Salmonella, Campylobacter, Listeria, and toxigenic E. coli. With these, we will look at the controversial issues of how we process meat and poultry to reduce risks. We will touch on seafood risks, including the risks of bacteria, such as one may contract from raw oysters or clams, and the properties of toxins from marine algae that may be carried by shellfish. We'll look at genetically engineered foods, their risks and benefits. We'll cover some of the other pre-GMO genetic manipulations that created some of our foods, including cloning, hybrid vigor, radiation, and mutation breeding. We'll look at pesticide residues, what is actually found in our foods, in the market, and how the residue limits are set. This is essentially how safe levels are established. We'll look at organic foods. and some of the other labels. What are the differences between organic and non-organic foods, so as to let you decide for yourself if the price difference is worth it. Finally, we'll take a quick look at some of the food production systems and their effect on the environment. I hope you'll find the class informative and help you make some everyday decisions, and maybe see you in the fall. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jim Applebaum. I'm the moderator of the Essays Discussion Group, now in its third decade as a class offering at Osher, Montgomery County. The Essays Discussion Group brings together a limited number of individuals for a lively, and sometimes quite lively, discussion. And everyone in the class gets into the act. That's the most frequently read comment at the end of each term. It's a true conversation between equals, always executed with respect and openness. For fall 2020, we'll read between sessions and then discuss over 20 interesting essays published during the last 100 years. Some are personal, others are argumentative, and still others expository. And since essays are transactional between author and reader, we may find grounds to examine how and why we process the information and opinions we find in essays the way we do. Please consider coming and joining us, especially at this time when the truth and honesty is so much in dispute. Thanks a lot.
Hello, my name is Roger Brunyate, and I will be teaching a 6-week course entitled Inside the Romantic Mind. These are going to be 6 snapshots into the artists, musicians, and poets of the 19th century. It's going to start with a course I call The Wild Within, about the way the Romantic movement unleashed the powers of thought and imagination, and sometimes even madness. I'm going to go on to the French Revolution and the arts inspired by and condemning Napoleon. Then I'm going to look at Faust and Frankenstein and romantic science and the novels and music inspired by those. I'm going to look at some of the musical virtuosi of the early 19th century and why Paganini, for example, was supposed to be in league with the devil. I'm going to look at Xanadu and madness and drug taking and explorations of the East. And finally, I'm going to be looking at the role of legend in romantic art through the century. Thank you for watching now, and I hope to see you in the fall.
Hi, I'm Ron Edelstein. I'm going to be offering a course in the fall, Energy and the Environment. You know, many of us thought we would go by the impacts of climate change, and yet here we are faced with a pandemic. What does this tell us for our ability to respond to crises? The other interesting thing about climate change is our drastic change in our energy use patterns. Industry has closed down, oil use is down by 35%. What does this say about our ability to respond to crises? We're going to be taking a look at how energy use impacts CO2 and greenhouse gases, and then how greenhouse gases impact climate change and other environmental issues. We're going to be taking a look at the environmental costs and benefits of this. We'll look at fossil fuels, coal, oil, natural gas. Is the age of fossil fuels gone? And what will replace it? How will we power our airplanes? How will we power our power plants? We'll take a look at solar. and wind and other renewables. Can we really go to 100% renewable energy future? What happens when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining? What will we do then? And so we'll deal with all these issues. And I want to take the time to discuss with you how we might make a difference, how we can change our energy use patterns, how we can change the amount of carbon we put into the atmosphere. So I look forward to the course, and I look forward to discussions with you in the future. Thank you.
Greetings, mystery lovers. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the class I have planned for next fall. It's called Detective Novels, under 200 pages, more or less. I must admit I cheated a little bit. We're going to be wide-ranging this time, and I want to prove to you that these are short. Look how skinny they are. We're going to do, I think, a really good selection. We're going to start with Laura Lippman, who lives up in Baltimore. We're going to look for The Murders of the Princes in the Tower, Was It Richard III, by Josephine Tay. We're going to go to a New Zealand sheep farm with Naomi Marsh, who is one of the Golden Age authors. And you're going to spend the weirdest Christmas ever with Joe Nesbo. And lastly, I'm really excited about this. We're going to look at Andrea Camilleri's last novel, which was published posthumously last month. So I think it's a really exciting lineup. And they're short. What's not to like? I would like for you to be looking forward to coming into my class on October 27th. We're back on our second half of the 12-week schedule, and we'll be meeting at 1 o'clock. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
My name's Dr. Rick Bell. I'm speaking to you from the University of Maryland, just north of Washington, D.C., where I'm a professor of history. And I think that it matters a great deal whether Hamilton the musical is good public history. And I know that it's absurdly creative and talented creator, lyricist, and librettist thinks the same thing. Lin-Manuel Miranda once said, "I want historians to take this seriously." And he said that on the day that he hired Ron Chernow, the guy who wrote the biography of Hamilton, on which this great show is based, to be this show's historical consultant. And Miranda himself certainly took his own job very seriously, researching all he could in the real Alexander Hamilton's surviving papers, reading lots of books about this interesting period in American history, and consulting with other experts as well.
Trailblazing Women series. In the last 150 years, women's roles have changed dramatically across the world. This series will feature female guest speakers from the region who have broken barriers in fields including politics, academia, and the corporate world. This series will feature lectures from Nina Zunt, President and CEO of Ecologic Home Solutions, EHS Maryland, one of the region's leading commercial and residential contractors. Michelle Bernard, American journalist, political analyst, lawyer, author, and president and CEO of the Bernard Center for Women, Politics, and Public Policy. Representative Connie Morella, Republican who represented Maryland's 8th Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives from 1987 to 2003. Gloria Jacobowitz, Technology Manager, Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory. Kim A. O'Connell, an award-winning writer with more than 20 years of publishing experience. And Laura DeSisto, the program director and a senior lecturer for the Master of Liberal Arts program at Johns Hopkins University.
Hi, I'm Nora Hamerman, and I'm giving a class this fall, which I call Masterpieces of the Northern Renaissance. And it's going to be a little different from anything that I've ever done before in that I will concentrate on just a few very, very famous paintings and some sculptures as well. So the idea is to zero in on these famous works of art and talk not just about the artistic side of them, the poetry involved, the text and so on, but to give as much as I can of the historical context in which they were created in the first place. And so I try to have a balance between the art and the history. And in the process, I will inevitably show other works by the same artist or by related artists around the same time. So each class, each 2-hour session will have either 1 or 2 very famous masterpieces: Jan van Eyck's Ghent altarpiece, The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse by Dürer, The Ambassadors by Holbein, perhaps the Grunewald Crucifixion, a painting of peasants dancing by Peter Bruegel. So each one will take one of these great works of art and discuss them in the broadest possible terms. So I have given classes on the Northern Renaissance before. I've never done it quite this way. I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope there'll be lots of participation by the students.
Welcome to another session of Osher in a different world circumstance. This is Bob Hines. I'm offering a course on Back to Russia. We left off with the last years of Lenin, early years of Stalin, so we're going to pick that up in the fall with some little bit of overview for people who are new to my Russian section. And it'll be covering Russia during the Stalin years, so consolidation of power, particularly a lot of details on leading up to World War II and the Eastern Front, and then the post-war period. Again, a great deal of digging into the origins of the Cold War. We're going to follow that through to the end of Stalin's death in March of '53. At the same time, we're going to be picking up in those years this other character called Khrushchev and his rise to power as an early Stalinist, and then his struggle to break out from the Stalin shadow in the mid-50s, being able to leave Stalin behind in de-Stalinization, but not to escape the system called Stalinism that had been built up over those years. And then we'll follow Khrushchev through domestic and foreign policy until his overthrow in 1964. And so that's pretty much the 12 weeks in the big picture. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Naomi Daremblum, and I will be teaching a course this fall called Cold War in South America, the Era of Military Dictatorships. So looking at this period when it all began in the 1960s, where you had pretty much every country in South America except for Venezuela and Colombia experienced a military dictatorship. They shared many attributes, the use of torture, the use of disappearances, the repression of their own citizens, restructuring of the economy. But probably the hallmark of a lot of these systems was their use of violence against their own citizens. And to look at how the systems that were the cruelest, probably in 400 years of Latin American history, and going from that to the systems that were held up as the examples of democratic transition, I think would be very, very interesting. It is also important to note that this period, as horrific as it was in terms of what citizens experienced, was also one of the most fruitful periods in terms of literature, music, and art. So we will be leaning heavily into those to look at what every society was experiencing, not only from the systemic level, but also at the grassroots level.
Good morning, this is Bob Sutton, and I want to talk a little bit about the course that I'm going to be teaching this fall on the history of the First Amendment, which will be Wednesday mornings. I think the First Amendment quite possibly is one of the most important pieces of legislation that has ever been passed in our history. It's something that we consider almost sacred, and I think would be a lot of fun, at least I think it'll be a lot of fun, to look at it through the history of our country. The First Amendment didn't just pop up when it was passed as part of the Bill of Rights. It was a long history in the colonial period before the First Amendment was passed. During the way, we'll talk about the Civil War, what happened during the Civil War. We'll talk about habeas corpus as a defense for protecting civil rights. We'll talk about World War I because that's a kind of a key period in the history of civil rights. We'll talk about the 14th Amendment. We'll talk about World War II. And during the course of the semester, we will look at cases or a case that deals with the First Amendment, and we'll talk about that during the course of the class. We'll end by discussing the Patriot Act and what that has done or not done to our civil liberties with the First Amendment. I look forward to seeing you all in the fall. I hope you all have a good summer. I hope you all stay safe and stay well. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you.
I'm Carl Hantman.
And I'm Debby Vivari.
And several years ago, I read a book called Seriously Funny. It was about stand-up comedians of the 50s and 60s who did a new kind of stand-up. They provided laughs, but with the laughs came social and political commentary. It was often quite sharp. Many of these humorists loved to test boundaries. Overall, it was an excellent book about interesting people and interesting times. And I thought, as I finished it, it might be a good class here at Osher. One day, Debby saw me carrying the book with me. She mentioned she'd read it too and loved it. I mentioned the possibility of a class and asked her if she wanted to join me in teaching it.
And unbelievably, I said yes, and so here we are. Now, the book deals with the 50s and the 60s. So we'll start with people like Saul and Phyllis Diller, but then we'll move beyond the book. And we'll look at people like Richard Pryor and George Carlin. And then we'll move all the way to contemporary comedians like Chris Rock and Sarah Silverman. We'll do some biographical information. We'll see how their comedy reflected the political and social mores of the time. We'll see if they got any pushback. And of course, we'll watch some fun stand-up. I think this class will not only be fun, but it will be interesting to see how comedy can reflect social attitudes and issues over the last 70 years. So say goodbye, Carl.
Goodbye, Carl.
Hi, this is Bob Clarke. It's going to be a class called A History of Scotland. We're going to take a look at the political, social, economic, religious, and military factors that influenced Scotland over the ages. We're going to start with prehistoric Scotland and go all the way up through Scottish history to 1745, when it was kind of the last whimper of Scottish independence. The class is my usual format. We'll be starting at 12:30, not 1 o'clock. It'll be Wednesday afternoons. We usually start with a warm-up video of something that Hollywood has made regarding Scottish history in this case. And then from 1 to 3, we'll have lecture format with lots of questions and PowerPoint presentations with images and charts and diagrams. It's a very, very interesting period of history. As you know, Scotland took a vote a couple of years ago, and it was a narrow stay in the UK. This history might help you form an opinion on whether you think that's a wise idea or not. So I'm looking forward to seeing you in the fall. Hope you take the course. Stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Joan Adams, and we're going to be doing a house dividing.
taking a look at American history from 1840 to 1860. Very complicated time in American history. Growth of the country as far as new states coming into the Union. There are elections. We have 7 presidents that served during this time period. Extremely interesting individuals that are working on expansion, people working in politics, differences in industry, and there's also a great deal of new writings and culture and people that are helping to change American society during this time. We're going to be introduced to a young man by the name of Abraham Lincoln, who's going to become a little bit more important later. This is also a time of conflict. We're going to be taking a look at the war with Mexico and how this impacts American foreign policy, and leading us right up to the brink of the Civil War with the election of 1860. Again, we're going to be taking brief snapshots of individuals who didn't make a great deal of impact in the history books, but really had a great deal of impact on American history during this time. So I hope you'll be able to join us, and I hope we'll all be able to be together in person during this time period. Again, we're going to be looking at A House Dividing, the American look at history 1840 to 1860.
I'm Eric McWilliams, the instructor for the Wednesday's Great Books class. When Hopkins first started their continuing ed for seniors in 1986, there were only 3 classes offered here in the Rockville campus. One of them was the Wednesday's Great Books class, and it has persisted ever since. When I first attended the class in 2002, we often discussed classical works by historical figures like Homer, Plato, and Shakespeare. But for the past several years, we have concentrated exclusively upon short stories, and we'll do that again next fall. We will use an anthology, this is it, called 100 Great Short Stories, which includes stories by authors such as Edgar Allan Poe, Harriet Beecher Stowe, Anton Chekhov, Charles Dickens, and so forth, including 95 other authors, including, to my great surprise, Benjamin Franklin. I lead the discussions for the first few weeks, but after that, normally, they're led by volunteers from the class. And that has helped to foster a sense of community, which most of us value highly. If this type of class appeals to you, you're welcome to join us.
I think a lot of what we do is public education too. I think there's an awful lot of things that we can do going out and teaching people how to protect themselves against identity theft, talking to children about how to stay out of gangs, talking to people within our school community about how we can make our schools safer places for our kids to go each day when they're trying to get their education. There are a lot of different things that we do that I think the average person would probably think are very non-traditional prosecutor kinds of things, and then every day we are in court prosecuting individuals who have been accused of crimes here in the county, which last year was close to 40,000 people. I think increasingly what you're actually finding is people are making a career out of prosecution. When you have a lot of young lawyers, you are training young people to exercise judgment, to learn the law, to learn evidence, to learn procedures. Mentoring and educating our own staff is one of the challenges that we meet every day here, because we now have about 70 lawyers, and probably 12 to 15 of them are in the first 2 years of their practice. And to make them understand that their obligation as a prosecutor is not simply to get a conviction, but to seek justice, make sure that the truth comes out. And that's a weighty responsibility because these are enormously powerful positions. And we talk about the fact that I want them to know how important it is, I think, for them to exercise their discretion properly to do what's best for the community, and not to think in terms of wins and losses, think in terms of public safety and what really makes us a better community.
What an exciting place to be in here at Strathmore. There's education and entertainment options for a wide variety of people. Can you tell me more about what type of entertainment I'd find here?
We have pop and rock music, a wide variety of classical music options. We have jazz and musicals from Broadway, a little bit of everything.
It really is an inspiring space.
Thank you. Yes, we think so. It's always active and very creative.
Let's go see some more.
Okay. Our acoustician for this concert hall was Larry Kierkegaard, and he introduced us to this whole new world of what creates an acoustic, and actually told us that it's very much like the inside of a violin.
You know, the spirit of Strathmore is giving back to the community and to the students of the community. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it would be. Every year we have every second grader and every fifth grader in Montgomery County Public Schools visit for a live performance.
And I imagine you're inspiring maybe the future musician or singer or performer out of those visits.
Oh, that's the motivation for sure. In 10 years, those are the folks who will be in the seats at the concert hall.
Once again, it's a set of unique venues that appeal to a lot of different types of people.
Absolutely. Whether you have a visual art interest, sculpture, we have a sculpture garden. If it's music, we have something for everyone.
Thank you so much for a wonderful tour of Strathmore. This is an amazing cultural amenity. I'm so glad that I saw it.
Thank you for including us. It's been nice showing you around today. This is Montgomery County's home for the arts. I hope you'll come back and visit.
I absolutely will. I'll see you at a performance soon.
Thank you.
Hello, Osher members. My name is Mary Dutterer, and what I'm going to be doing for Fall 20 is to talk a little bit about Korean cinema. Now, we've all heard about Parasite, which was not only the best foreign language film at the last Oscars, but also won Best Director, Best Screenwriting, and Best Picture. And for a lot of people, they were really surprised. They were like, oh wow, I've never really heard about Korean cinema, and here's this film winning all these awards. But Korean cinema over the past 25 to 30 years has been pretty amazing. So we're going to be looking at a lot of movies. We're going to be spotlighting 5 or 6 directors. We're going to be looking at things like Memories of Murder, The Man from Nowhere, Joint Security Area. We're also going to be looking at how the relationship between North and South Korea permeates things that happen in South Korean cinema. Spring, Summer, Fall, Winter, and Spring. Secret. And we may even go over one of the first ones I ever saw, Attack the Gas Station, which is a hysterical film. So I hope you consider taking my class, and I look forward to seeing you. Take care.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Schoenberg. I'm teaching a class in the second half of the fall semester that's called American Literature from 1918 to 1930. In other words, we're going to be dealing with what folks have called the Jazz Age or the Roaring Twenties, an incredibly rich period for the development of American literature. We're going to start, and you should read this before you come to the first class, with Willa Cather's My Antonia. We'll go on to Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, some short stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald, some short stories from the Harlem Renaissance, people like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes, Thornton Wilder's incredibly fine short novel, The Breach of San Luis Rey, and with William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying. This is a period of great experimentation in literature and dealing with new subjects and dealing with them in new ways. I think you'll find the material particularly engrossing. I hope to see you all then, and I hope it will be in person.
The course for this fall semester is Beethoven's Heroic Period. In 1802, Beethoven does something extraordinary. He takes the summer off, he goes to Heiligenstadt, and he writes this amazing document called the Heiligenstadt Testament. Part suicide letter, part last will and testament, part journaling, part therapy. and he resolves that his deafness is not going to prevent him from achieving the musical goals that he has set out for himself. And he emerges from Heiligenstadt in 1802, and the first thing he does is write the Eroica. And the Eroica leads to this unbelievable outpouring of incredible musical material, which is known as his heroic period. And there is not a genre that is untouched by this, and there's not a genre that Beethoven didn't write works of genius in. We have symphonies 3, 4, 5, and 6. We have the Razumovsky string quartets. We have the opera Fidelio. We have the violin concerto. We have countless piano sonatas like the Appassionata and the Waldstein. In essence, Beethoven writes new works. He says, I will find a new path. From now on, I will seek a new path. And his new path is extraordinary. And it is Beethoven's heroic period. And Beethoven's heroic period is marked by unbelievable genius and masterpieces, as I said, in a wide variety of genres, and should make for 12 lectures of extraordinary interest. Thank you and goodbye.
I'm Eleanor Clift, and I'll be teaching at Osher this fall. My class is titled 2020 Election, Who Will Be Left Standing? We are living through, my friends, the most interesting times that the Chinese philosophers could ever have imagined. We've got a election that will cover not only the presidency, but whether the Republicans will continue to maintain control of the US Senate, whether the Democrats can continue to hold the House. The Supreme Court is at stake. We've got 2 of the justices on the progressive side who are in their 80s, and there's already a conservative majority. So the future of the Supreme Court for a generation or 2 is at stake in this election. Politics is the best and the worst of a democratic society, and I'm sure we're going to see some of the worst of it over the coming months. And when we begin meeting in September, we will be at the peak of the re-election season with the election on November 3rd. So I look forward to everyone who takes this class, and I can promise a lot of interaction, a lot of highs and lows, and a lot of just plain venting to each other. And I hope I can bring some background and some of my knowledge over the years from covering politics since, I guess, since the days of Jimmy Carter, which is what brought me to Washington. I covered his campaign for Newsweek. So here I am, and I look forward to seeing all of you in the fall.
Good morning. My name is Gideon Amir, and I'm going to teach a class on the first book of Maccabees. The first book of Maccabees is really one part of 4 books that are part of what we call the Apocrypha. These are books that have been rejected by the rabbis and are not part of the Jewish canon or the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, as you call it. But we are lucky that these books were actually accepted by the early Catholic Church as part of the scripture, and that's why they are included as part of the Catholic Bible. The Catholic Bible has 3 parts: the Old Testament, the Apocrypha, and the New Testament. So the book of Maccabees were preserved as a result of that, and that's why we have them today. The way that we will study the book is the same way that we studied all other books in the Bible itself, basically reading chapter by chapter, verse by verse. Here and there we may skip a little bit, and trying to see what the text can tell us. One of the things that we will also try to understand while reading the book is if we can figure out the reason why the book was rejected and was not included in the canon of the Hebrew Bible. I hope to see many of you virtually or non-virtually, depending on the situation, when the course starts. Thank you, and stay safe.
Hi, my name is Ann Wicker, and I'm excited about teaching a course in fall of 2020, both at the Rockville campus and at the Baltimore campus. The course is called Copy This, an Exploration of Printmaking. And in this course, I'll be exploring artists throughout history who have utilized printmaking in their art practice. I'll also be looking at different kinds of printmaking techniques, from back in the day of Albrecht Dürer using woodcut blocks all the way up to current giclée prints. And we'll be talking about not only those techniques, but also the purpose of those kinds of prints, and even the art market reception to that type of artwork. I'll be looking at artists like Andy Warhol, Salvador Dali, Pablo Picasso, Barbara Kruger, Helen Frankenthaler, artists that probably are familiar to you, but you may not have known that they had printmaking within their art practice. And we'll explore why they chose that medium and what kind of printmaking they were involved with, and how the finished products fared in comparison to more traditional paintings or drawings. I look forward to teaching this class, and I hope to see you there.
And what we're seeing mostly is how sophisticated this culture must have been in order to build these magnificent stone structures with carvings and designs in them. And we're going thousands of years before Christ. We are just amazed to see this experience, and unless you see it, you can't even believe it. We will also be going then eventually to the Archaeological Museum in the capital city in Valletta, where most of the remains, such as statues and pottery that were found here, we can actually see them preserved there.
In a
We
moment.
will just walk in to the temple entrance
Okay.
in Nidra. Sure.
Hold on a second.
So this is
So-
the temple entrance. This
Yes.
would have been the main door of this very special site.
And
this would be the innermost chamber.
Yes.
Like a kind of a holy of holies.
Mhm.
There is a kind of a table, possibly an altar.
Yes.
And there would have been offerings or a statue of the deities that we have found in the part of the museum now.
Hi, I'm Carl Hantman. I'm the instructor or facilitator, if you will, for our current events class. Somebody once said, like it or not, we live in interesting times, and these sure are. You might be able to think of other adjectives. What we try to do, though, in current events is to make some sense out of what's going on. We begin each class by exploring an issue that is continuing in the past and into the present, probably the future, and looking at all sides of it. I started off with a video, hopefully representing different opinions, and we can discuss that for up to a half hour. After that, we go with more events that happened in the last week, and we cover almost any field that captures our interest, from the usual politics and government, entertainment, science, and almost anything that we think might be good for discussion. So I want to emphasize that we seek people of all opinions, and we especially want to emphasize all reasoned, that's REASONED, are welcome and will be respected by the management, and that's me. So if following the news interests you, please join us. You'll get a chance to express your views, informing others, and you might learn something yourself from other members of the class. Hope to see you, and thank you.
I am Mara Bayowitz, reading the course description for Iris Lipkowitz as her voice. She will be teaching a class called the New York City Ballet, Its History and Future. Hi, I am Iris Lipkowitz. I teach ballet history and appreciation courses here every fall semester. Each year, the New York City Ballet, one of the preeminent ballet companies, performs at the Kennedy Center, this year being an exception due to the pandemic. If you would like to learn how this company came to be known as the House of Balanchine, and which other choreographers have largely shaped its repertory, join this Thursday afternoon class. Via performance footage as well as documentaries, you will learn about the choreography of George Balanchine, Jerome Robbins, and Peter Martins, as well as several current choreographers. No previous ballet knowledge is required. Thanks.
Poiché quell'occhio al cuore onnipotente va. Viviamo, amor, amore, fra i calici più d'anima chi avrà.
Hi, I'm Dorothea Wolfson, and I'll be teaching a class this fall on Tocqueville's Democracy in America. Now, Tocqueville's book, Democracy in America, is one of the most penetrating and incisive and enduring studies of democracy, and in particular of American democracy. Now, Tocqueville came to America in the 1830s, a few decades out from the French Revolution, to try to understand what made the only working democracy at the time, America, so stable and so successful. The class itself will start with Tocqueville's analysis of America's point of departure in our Puritan origins and any lingering influences that they still have. We will also look at the vitality of America's civil society as Tocqueville presented it, the vitality of America's political institutions, its religiosity, its family life, its innovation and energy that he appreciated so much. But we'll also look at some of the problems of democracy as he presented them, which include the problem of conformity, the problem of the tyranny of the majority, and the problem of race relations as he saw them. So I really hope to see you this fall. I'm excited about teaching this class and looking forward to hearing your take on this classic book and its relevance and any insights that you find applicable to the democracy today. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bess Vincent, and I'm the Director of Special Projects in the Dean's Office for the Krieger School of Arts and Sciences. And I'm helping to coordinate Johns Hopkins University's commemoration of women's suffrage and the passage of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. And we've created a course for Osher called Value the Vote, commemorating the women's suffrage centennial. And we're working with the Baltimore community to really encourage everyone to value the vote this year. In this course, we'll learn a lot about the Hopkins role in suffrage and some of the many resources we have within our institution to study suffrage. So we'll talk about the history of the movement, and we'll talk about how postcards were used as pretty standard propaganda in the day, and video vintage games as well as board games. We'll also talk about music within the movement and how it was used to spread the message of suffrage. We'll also study some major figures in Hopkins history, including Mary Elizabeth Garrett, who provided the funds to found the Hopkins Medical School under the condition that women be allowed to join. We'll also learn about May Garretson Evans, who helped to found the Peabody Institute. Well, in the lecture series, the course, with a discussion about suffrage at 100. So where has the movement taken us today, and what implications do we have for our political lives and female empowerment today? We hope you'll join us for what should be a wonderful course, and we hope you stay safe.
Hi, I'm Nancy Rice. I'm leading a great books class on Thursday afternoons during the second 6 weeks of the semester. We'll read works from around the world, all written during the 19th century. Works will come from various European countries, from the US, from the Philippines, from Japan, and some of the authors are Balzac, Baudelaire, short story by Edgar Allan Poe, an American slave narrative, an Ibsen play, as well as works from Asia. These are either short works complete in themselves, or they may be excerpts from longer works. The reading time per week is about several hours. This is a discussion class. We come to class having read the assignment, and class members discuss it in response to questions posed by me. We are always amazed at the range of opinions and interpretations that people bring to the readings. And we have a very relaxed atmosphere. People feel free to express themselves, and the hashing out the resulting differences results in better understanding of the work and appreciation of it by all of us. The book we'll use is an anthology of 19th century world literature. The particulars are given in the course booklet, and you can buy inexpensive used copies from Amazon or other online vendors. So I hope to see you.
We are looking forward to seeing you on the ground in the fall, and to being able to once again do what we do best and offer you a supportive and enriching learning opportunity.